I left a job making about $375,000 a year as a locum CRNA to go to med school. Right now, I'm sitting on roughly $700,000 in student loans, making about $100,000 as a resident, working nearly double the hours. A lot of people think I'm crazy. So I ran the actual numbers to answer one question. Does this decision make financial sense? Let's find out. So what's going on, everybody? Mac here, first-year anesthesiology resident in New York City. Before this, I spent over 10 years working as a CRNA. Today, it's strictly about money. We're going to talk real costs, real opportunity loss, and some earning potentials that are possible on the other side. This is a no fluff, no follow your passion speech. Just let me show you exactly what I left behind. So my locum CRNA income was about $375K as a CRNA. My hourly rate, roughly about $228 to $240 an hour, give or take. My typical work hours were about 30 to 40 hours a week. So when you do the math on that, that's about $30,000 more a month gross. I picked my schedule. There was no mandatory call. There's no weekends unless I wanted them. That's the lifestyle a lot of people work their entire careers to reach. Decade of experience, near the top of my earning curve, maximal flexibility. Now that number, 375K, now it's important because everything from here forward is going to get measured against that number. Now let's talk about what the decision actually costs. Not just tuition, the full financial picture. Let's open up the bank. Let's open up all the statements and let's dive in. So medical school, we all know, that's about 4 years. For me, my total student loan debt was about $700K. You heard that right, $700K. That includes tuition, fees, and living expenses. One important detail, during my 4th year of med school, I was fortunate enough to work part-time as a locum CRNA, in which I made about $325K that year. So the lost income wasn't a clean 4 years to zero. Let's go back a little bit. Years 1 to 3, the lost CRNA income was, if you do the math, that's 3 times $375K. That's about $1.1 million. If I factor in the year 4 gap, where instead of making $375, I made about $325, that's about a $50,000 difference. So in actuality, for me, my total lost income during med school was about 1.17 million, give or take. Now, let's add residency. Currently, I'm fortunate enough to be in a residency program that has a fairly high salary. So my salary is about $100,000 a year. What I would be making as a locum CRNA was about $370,000 a year. So we do the math on that. The annual gap between the two practices is about $275,000. So over 4 years, that's 1.1 million. Also, during residency, I'm working 60 to 80 hours a week. So thinking about it and doing the math on it, my effective hourly rate dropped from about $230 an hour to about $30 an hour. Now, if you step back and look at the full financial impact, the student loans, the lost income differential, and the interest accruing on that loan, which is about $150K to $200K, the total financial impact of this transition roughly is in the $2.5 to $3 million range, depending on assumptions. That's the price tag. Let that sink in for a little bit. That's the part that people don't talk about. So what's on the other side? In my area, attending anesthesiologists, now keep in mind the market may vary. It may vary based on structure, calls, practice type, but a reasonable salary range is somewhere between $450 to $550K. $1,000, that is, for many positions. Locums, if you choose to go the locum route, that's about $350 an hour, depending on the demand and the region. So let's compare that to where I was. My peak income was $375. Now I know some people are going to be listening to this and watching this and say, oh, I definitely make way more than that. I'm talking about my situation, okay? Keep in mind that it varies from state to state and person to person, okay? So for me, my peak income before I went back to school was about $375K. The locum rates, they're still kind of hover around the same, so it's like $220 to $240 an hour. So that hourly gap, often between like $60 and $120 more per hour as a physician. So this is where the math is really going to start to shift over time as we progress through. So let me give you an example comparison, right? So let's say an MD locum is making about $325 an hour, okay? Working 40 hours a week for 48 weeks a year. So that works out to be $624,000 a year. Contrast that with a CRNA locum making $230 an hour for 40 hours for 48 weeks. That's about $441,600 a year, okay? The difference between the two is about $180,000. That's just clinical income. Now here's a part that changes the equation for me personally. So my plan after residency is not to just take a W-2 job. I have two potential tracks. So track one essentially is going to be about continuing to expand my locums business, but now I'm going to be contracting at physician rates and negotiating directly with facilities. My second track involves partnering with a pain management clinic. So as a physician, I can own, bill, and lead interventional procedures, procedures like injections, nerve blocks, spinal cord stimulator. So that level of ownership and revenue structure isn't available to CRNAs in the same way in my region. It may differ when you go out to certain states that have an opt-out position, but in my region, not available. It's a fair assumption for me to make. So well-run practices, they can generate very strong physician income, but that depends heavily on execution, market, and business structure. You really have to be this business savvy person to really maximize your potential. Realistically, from within a few years post-residency, I'm aiming for a total income range in the 600 to 800K range through combined clinical work and business growth. Now, that's not a guarantee, but that's my plan. Having a plan, it matters, right? Now here's the timeline. Let's keep the numbers really simple, okay? I left CRNA practice, let's say around age 40. My med school, about 4 years, residency, 4 years. I'm gonna start as an attendant around 48, 49. So from 40 to 48, I'm financially in a deep hole compared to the version of me that just stayed a CRNA. This is my reality. The lower pay, the longer hours, the did I make the right move phase, all that's happening on a day-to-day basis, this is the fact that I cannot escape. But looking forward, a conservative scenario. So let's say I take on an employed position, like a W-2 position. That annual difference versus an employed CRNA is going to be about $200,000, which means I will break even roughly about 15 years. So that's clearly putting me in my early 60s. The more aggressive scenario, which is my actual plan, which involves locums and ownership, that annual difference is going to put me between 300 to 400K, and I'm going to break even closer to 8 to 10 years. So that puts me in my mid to late 50s. Now, once you cross that line, the gap keeps widening. So is it worth it? Financially, the answer depends on who you are. This makes more sense if you are, for example, you're younger. You have like this 20 to 30 years of being an attendant income well in front of you. Also, if you have financial support or savings to absorb the transition, that's the right move for you. If you have a plan beyond just taking a W-2 job, or you want access to ownership and business opportunities, this is harder to justify if, for example, you're over 40, like me. You're already in a high-earning locum CRNA and you're satisfied. You don't have a financial safety net, or your only plan is traditional employment. For me specifically, if I just took a W-2 job, the pure financial return on investment, well, it's tight. I'd likely break even around my early 60s. But I'm not building a career around a single salary. I'm building it around business ownership, multiple income streams, autonomy. That is what shifts the math. So here's the honest bottom line. This decision cost me roughly 2.5 to 3 million when you factor in debt and lost income. That's legit money. But on the other side, there's higher long-term earning potential, there's ownership opportunities, and a ceiling that's different from where I was. So the question isn't just, does it pay off? The real question is going to be, do you have a long enough runway and a strong enough plan to make it pay off? If this breakdown helped you, if it helped you think through the numbers, go ahead and subscribe. I'm documenting this entire CRNA to MD journey in real time. The finances, the training, and the reality behind the decision. Drop a comment. What's the biggest financial question you're trying to answer right now? I'll see you guys in the next video.